All right, so think about it for a second, right? Your earbuds, how you connect to your car, even, maybe your bathroom skill, it's all Bluetooth, right?
It really is everywhere.
And you kind of just, you expect it to work.
Yeah. Seamlessly, right, in the background.
Exactly.
But that seamlessness, I think, is what makes it so important to think about the security of it all.
Absolutely. And that's what we're diving into today. Bluetooth security.
Real risks.
Yeah, the vulnerabilities, what's happened in the past, and what's still a problem even with, the latest Bluetooth, like 5.3 and later.
We're not trying to scare anyone off Bluetooth.
No.
But I think a clear picture of the risks is really important, to help people protect themselves.
Exactly. Without, getting too lost in the technical weeds.
Right. Exactly.
And to be honest, Bluetooth hasn't exactly had a perfect security record, has it?
There have been some bumps along the way.
There have been a few, shall we say, learning opportunities.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. So to really see where we are now, we kind of got to go back and look at, the history of Bluetooth security holes, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think there are some incidents there that really show us what's at stake.
Yeah.
We kind of have to understand the past to understand the present and protect ourselves in the future.
Yeah, those landmark vulnerabilities, those big incidents, they give us such crucial context for the security challenges we face today.
Exactly.
So why don't we start with BlueBorne?
Oh, yeah.
Back in 2017.
Big one.
This was a big one. What made BlueBorne so significant, do you think, from a user's perspective?
Well, first of all, it was huge. It affected, what was it, something like 5.3 billion devices?
5.3 billion. It was a massive vulnerability.
And it wasn't just, one type of device. It was Android, Linux, iPhones, Windows computers.
Yeah, you name it. Everything was pretty much susceptible.
It was everywhere. And what was really scary about it, I think, was that it was a collection of, 8 different zero-day exploits.
8 0 days.
And, when we say 0 day, for people who don't know, that means, the companies making those devices didn't even know about those weaknesses until they were already being used in attacks,
Yeah, the bad guys were already using them to get into people's systems before anyone even knew they existed.
Exactly. And so there were no patches, no fixes available.
Right, no defenses. People were completely exposed.
It was scary. And then, what was even more concerning about BlueBorne was that it was zero-click.
Oh, yeah, the zero-click aspect of it that was terrifying.
Meaning, you don't have to do anything.
Nothing.
As a user. You don't click a link. You don't download a file.
You don't even have to pair with the malicious device.
It just happens.
In the background.
Yeah.
Silently.
Yeah. And the impact, potential. it could have been really bad.
It was bad. Remote control of your device, eavesdropping on your conversations, stealing your files.
It showed just how important it is, for those manufacturers to put out security updates quickly.
Absolutely. And the scary thing is that, there are still devices out there that don't get updates anymore.
Right. They're just sitting ducks for something like BlueBorne.
So it's not just about the companies, right? It's also about users being aware and understanding that they have a responsibility to keep their devices updated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then moving on, in 2018-2019, we had the KNOB attack, key negotiation of Bluetooth.
Right.
And this one, it seems, really targeted the way Bluetooth devices connect in the first place.
Yeah. KNOB was all about Bluetooth Classic, or BLURtooth as they call it sometimes.
Right. Think of that as, the traditional Bluetooth we use for things like headphones.
Yeah. And what the attack did was it basically messed with the way two devices agreed on their secret key.
Their encryption key.
Right. The key they were going to use to keep their communication private.
It's like, imagine two people trying to agree on a secret code word, right?
Yeah.
Before they have a private conversation. And then someone comes along and whispers in their ear, hey, use this much simpler word instead.
Oh, I see.
And they get tricked into using a weaker code, making it much easier to eavesdrop on their conversation.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
So with KNOD, attackers could basically force those devices to use weaker encryption than they should have been using.
Right. And then snoop on their communication, even though it was supposed to be secure.
Exactly. That's the danger of KNOB.
But thankfully, it seems like Bluetooth low energy, BLE, the time they use in fitness trackers and stuff, that wasn't affected.
No, BLE was safe from KNOB, so at least there was that.
Silver lining.
But still, it showed us that even something as fundamental as the way devices agree on their secret key can have weaknesses that can be exploited.
Yeah. I guess the lesson there is that initial handshake has to be rock solid.
Absolutely. You can't take anything for granted.
And then, coming up to 2019 and 2020, we have SweynTooth. Now, this wasn't just one vulnerability, was it?
No, SweynTooth is more like a whole collection of them.
Yeah, like a dozen or so, right?
12, to be exact.
12 potential security problems. And they were hiding in a pretty important part of a lot of devices.
Yeah, they were found in the software development kits, or SDKs as they're called,
Right.
from different companies that make those system on a chip, the SOCs.
Think of those like the brains of small devices.
Exactly. Like, one little chip that has everything on it.
And a lot of these chips, they're used in Bluetooth low-energy devices.
Millions of them.
Yeah.
Smartwatches, fitness trackers, all those little Internet of Things gadgets.
So it wasn't a problem with the finished product, but with the building blocks that lots of products use.
Right. He was deeper down in the foundation.
So what could those SweynTooth problems actually do to someone's device?
Well, some of them weren't too bad, like your device might crash or freeze up.
Annoying.
Yeah, just annoying. But others, those were more serious. They could let an attacker get past the security features completely. So SweynTooth really showed us that security isn't just about the final product. It's about every single part of the process, from the chip all the way to the software.
Like, even if the company making your smartwatch did everything right, if the chip itself had a flaw, it could still be a problem.
Exactly. It's about the whole chain, the whole ecosystem.
And then there's the issue of updates. Like, even when they found fixes for those chips, not all devices actually got updated, did they?
That's a great point. See, when vulnerabilities are found, the chip makers often do release fixes. But then it's up to the companies making the final products, the smartwatches or whatever, to actually use those fixes in their own software.
And then they have to send that update out to us, the users.
And that doesn't always happen. So you can have devices out there that are still vulnerable, even though a fix exists.
Oh, wow. That's definitely something to think about when we're buying these gadgets.
It is. We have to be aware of the long-term security implications.
Okay, so moving on to 2020, we had bias Bluetooth impersonation attacks. And this one, it seems like we're back to Bluetooth Classic again.
We are. Bias-targeted Bluetooth Classic specifically. And what it did was pretty sneaky. It allowed an attacker to pretend to be a device that your phone or computer had already paired with.
So, like, if I've connected my phone to my car's Bluetooth, someone could make their device look like my phone to my car.
Exactly. That's the basic idea.
And gain access to it.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
They could trick your car into thinking it was talking to your phone when it was actually talking to the attacker's device.
That's scary. How does that even work?
Well, Bias exploited some weaknesses in the way Bluetooth Classic authenticates devices, especially in how it uses something called the long-term key.
The long-term key.
Okay. You can think of that key like a shared secret that two devices remember after they've paired for the first time, so they don't have to go through the whole pairing process again every time they connect.
Makes sense.
But Bias found a way to reuse or manipulate that key, essentially breaking the authentication process.
So basically, the device thought it was talking to a friend, but it was actually talking to an enemy.
Exactly. And that's a dangerous situation to be in.
It is. So what happened after bias was discovered? Did they fix it?
Yeah, the Bluetooth SIG, the group that oversees the Bluetooth standards, they responded pretty quickly.
Good.
They made changes to the specifications to address the vulnerability. But of course, it's up to the manufacturers to actually implement those changes in their devices.
Right, and for us users to make sure our devices have the latest software.
Absolutely. It all comes back to those updates.
And 2020 was a busy year for Bluetooth vulnerabilities, wasn't it?
It was.
Because we also had BLURtooth.
That's right.
Now, this one was interesting because it affected both Bluetooth 4.0 and the newer 5.0.
Yeah, it spanned across different versions.
So it wasn't just a problem with older tech.
And what BLURtooth did was it basically gave an attacker two ways to compromise a device.
Okay.
They could either sneak in and establish a connection without permission.
Like force their way in.
Exactly. Or they could weaken the encryption of an existing connection.
Oh, so even if you thought you had a secure connection, BLURtooth could mess that up.
Yeah. It was a pretty serious threat.
So even the newer Bluetooth versions weren't safe.
It just goes to show that you always have to be vigilant.
Right. And then I think the last one from 2020 that we have to talk about is BleedingTooth.
Right.
Now, just the name sounds bad.
It does, doesn't it?
And this one was all about Linux.
Yeah, it targeted the BlueZ kernel Bluetooth stack.
Which is like a really important part of how Linux handles Bluetooth.
Very fundamental.
What made BleedingTooth so dangerous was that it was, again, a zero-click attack.
Zero-click remote code execution.
So just like BlueBorne, you don't have to do anything.
Nothing.
No clicking, no downloading. It just happens.
Someone could potentially take control of your device without you even knowing.
And in this case, run their own code on your Linux system.
Or steal your data. It was a very serious vulnerability.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So that was 2020.
A very busy year for Bluetooth security.
It was. But what about now? Like, are the newer Bluetooth versions, like 5.3 and all that, are they safer?
Well, they definitely have a lot of security improvements compared to the older versions.
Okay.
But, no technology is perfect.
Right.
And new vulnerabilities are still being found all the time.
So it's not like we're out of the woods.
Definitely not. We have to stay aware of the evolving threats.
Exactly. And that's why we're doing this deep dive, right?
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
All right, so what are some of these newer vulnerabilities that we should be aware of?
Well, let's start with BLUFFS, Bluetooth Forward and Future Secrecy Attacks and Defenses.
BLUFFS. Catchy name.
It is, isn't it?
When did that one come out?
This one surfaced in 2023, 2024. And what's notable about it is that it affects a pretty wide range of Bluetooth versions.
Like what?
We're talking from 4.2 all the way up to 5.4.
Oh, wow. So even the latest stuff.
Even the latest.
So what's the problem with BLUFFS?
Well, it allows for what are called man-in-the-middle attacks.
Man in the middle. That sounds bad.
It can be. It basically means someone can intercept the communication between two devices.
And eavesdrop on it.
Exactly.
Okay. But isn't that what we were just talking about with KNOB? Like, didn't that do something similar?
Yeah, there are some similarities, but BLUFFS is actually even worse in some ways because it can also potentially decrypt future communication sessions.
Wait, what? So even if I had a secure connection in the past and I think my future connections are going to be secure, BLUFFS can mess that up.
That's the risk.
That's not good.
No, it's not ideal.
How does that even work?
Well, it's a bit complicated, but basically it involves forcing the devices to use weaker encryption keys.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like KNOB, but with a longer lasting effect.
You could say that. And again, it mainly targets Bluetooth Classic.
Okay, so that's something to watch out for. What else is there?
Well, there's CVE 2023-45866, which has the rather interesting name. Hi, my name is Keyboard.
Hi, my name is Keyboard.
Yeah.
What is that?
That one's pretty nasty, actually, because it affects a really wide range of platforms. We're talking Android from version 4.2.2 up to 14, Linux, Mac OS, even iOS, especially with the Apple Magic Keyboard.
So pretty much everything.
Pretty much.
And what's the fake keyboard all about?
Well, it basically lets an attacker create a fake Bluetooth keyboard.
Okay.
And then use that to connect to your device without you having to do anything.
Wait, so they don't have to go through that whole pairing process, like where it asks you if you want to connect to the device?
They bypass all of that.
That's sneaky.
It is. And once they're connected, they can send commands to your device as if they were typing on a real keyboard.
Oh, so they could like install malware, or steal my passwords, or...
All of that, potentially, it's a very serious security risk.
And it sounds like a lot of devices are still vulnerable to it.
Yeah, especially older Android versions.
So again, updates are crucial.
Absolutely. And being careful about what you connect to.
Right. All right, what else do we have?
Well, there's a very recent one, CDE 2025-27840. This one affects the expressive ESP32 chips.
ESP32, aren't those used in a ton of stuff?
Yeah, they're in a lot of IoT devices, smart home gadgets, sensors, all sorts of things.
So this could be a big deal.
It could be, yes.
What's the problem with those chips?
Well, it turns out there are some undocumented commands that an attacker can exploit.
Undocumented commands. So like hidden backdoors that shouldn't even be there.
Basically, yeah.
That's not good.
No, it's not. And the consequences could be pretty severe.
Like what?
An attacker could potentially spoof a device, make it look like a legitimate one.
Okay.
They could steal data or use the device as a stepping stone to attack other devices on the network.
So they could use my smart light bulb to hack into my computer?
Potentially, yes.
That's wild.
It is. And what's even crazier is that this affects a specific version of the ESD32 software from March 2025.
So it's like brand new.
Yeah, it's a very recent discovery.
It's crazy to think that even the latest tech can have these kinds of flaws.
It just shows that security is an ongoing process.
All right, so with all these different Bluetooth vulnerabilities we've talked about, I mean, how dangerous are they really?
Well, it varies. Some are more serious than others.
Right.
Like, some might just cause your device to crash, which is annoying, but not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But others, they could allow someone to completely take control of your device or steal your data or even use your device to attack others.
So there's a whole spectrum.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand the difference.
Exactly. So what are some of the worst ones? Like the ones that could really cause serious damage?
Well, we've already talked about a few of them. BlueBorne, BleedingTooth, those are examples of what we call remote code execution vulnerabilities.
Remote code execution. That sounds bad.
It is. It means someone can run any code they want on your device.
So they have full control.
Basically, yeah.
Not good.
Not good at all. And then there's blue snarfing, where an attacker can steal your data, like your contacts, your messages, things like that.
Oh, wow. So like identity theft and stuff.
Exactly. That's a big risk. And then there are man-in-the-middle attacks, like we talked about with KNOB and BLUFFS, where someone can eavesdrop on your communication.
Right. So they could see what I'm typing or hear what I'm saying?
Potentially, yes.
Not good.
Not good. And then there's also blue bugging, which is where someone can secretly use your phone to make calls or send messages without you knowing.
Oh, wow. So they could run up my phone bill or send spam messages from my number.
Exactly. There are a lot of ways these vulnerabilities can be exploited.
It's a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
I know. It can be a lot to take in. But the good news is there are things you can do to protect yourself.
Okay, good. Because I was going to ask about that. So, like, as a regular person who uses Bluetooth, what can I actually do to stay safe?
Well, first of all, the simplest thing you can do is just turn off Bluetooth when you're not using it.
Okay.
It seems obvious, but a lot of people leave it on all the time.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
But if it's off, it can't be exploited.
Right, that makes sense.
And then, when you are using Bluetooth, try to only pair with devices you trust.
Like not random devices in public places or anything.
Exactly. And make sure you're using a strong PAN and or password when you pair.
Okay. What else?
Keeping your software up to date is crucial.
Updates, updates, updates.
Exactly.
All right, I'm getting the message. What about those specific vulnerabilities we talked about? Like, are there any special tricks for those?
Well, for BLUFFS, it's important to make sure you have the patches for those older vulnerabilities, KNOB and BIAS.
Right.
Because those can help protect against BLUFFS as well.
Okay.
And if your device lets you, try to set a minimum encryption key length.
Minimum encryption key length. Got it.
And for hi, my name is keyboard. Well, updating your software is the most important thing.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here.
And then with KNOB, some devices might let you reject connections that use weak encryption keys.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, so it's worth checking your Bluetooth settings to see if you have that option.
Good tip. And what about when I'm buying a new device? Like, is there anything I should be looking for in terms of Bluetooth security?
Well, try to go for devices that use the latest Bluetooth versions, like 5.3 and later.
Okay.
Because they generally have better security.
Right.
And when you're pairing, if you have the option, avoid using Just Works pairing.
Just Works.
Yeah, it's the simplest way to pair, but it's also the least secure.
So what should I use instead?
Try numeric comparison or passkey entry.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Anything else?
Well, it's always good to see if the device mentions anything about using strong encryption for Bluetooth.
Right, so I guess it's kind of like a multi-layered approach, right?
Exactly. You have to be aware of the risks, you have to keep your devices updated, and you have to choose devices that prioritize security.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but it's worth it.
It is. So we've talked a lot about different operating systems and devices, and it seems like some are more vulnerable than others.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like, is there any platform that's just, like, the most vulnerable?
Well, it's hard to say definitively because they all have their own strengths and weaknesses.
Oh.
But historically, Android has been a pretty common target for Bluetooth attacks.
Android. Why is that?
Well, it's a very popular platform, which makes it attractive to attackers.
Right. Bigger target.
Exactly. And there have been some pretty serious vulnerabilities found in Android over the years.
Like what?
Well, we've already talked about BlueBorne and BlueFrag. And then there was that, hi, my name is Keyboard 1, which also affected Android.
Right, right.
And older Android versions, especially those before Android 11, they might not get the security updates they need.
So they're kind of stuck with those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, unfortunately.
What about iPhones? Are they safer?
Well, they've had their share of Bluetooth problems, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like BlueBorne and hi, my name is Keyboard also affected iPhones.
Interesting.
But Apple is generally pretty good about releasing updates quickly.
Okay, so at least there's that.
Yeah. And then there's Linux.
Linux. Now, that one seems a bit different, right? Because it's open source and all that.
It is, yeah. And that means there are a lot of different versions of Linux out there, which can make security a bit more complicated.
Okay.
But Linux has definitely had its share of Bluetooth issues, like BleedingTooth, for example, which targeted the Linux kernel.
Oh, right, right.
And hi, my name is Keyboard also affected Linux.
So it's not immune.
No platform is completely immune.
And what about Windows?
Windows has been hit by Bluetooth vulnerabilities too.
Yeah.
Like BlueBorne, for instance.
Okay.
And Microsoft does put out regular security updates. But older versions of Windows, like Windows 7, they're not supported anymore, so they might be more vulnerable.
Right. So basically, it doesn't really matter what operating system you use. You still have to be careful.
Exactly. You always have to be aware of the risks and take steps to protect yourself.
Okay, so it's not just about the operating system.
No, it's about the whole ecosystem.
Right. So what about the devices themselves? Like, are some types of devices just more vulnerable than others?
Well, generally speaking, older devices are more vulnerable
Yeah,
because they might not get security updates anymore.
makes sense.
And then their IoT devices, those smart home gadgets and all that,
Right.
they can be risky, especially if they use certain chipsets.
Like the ESP32 ones we talked about.
Exactly.
Okay.
What else?
Well, some devices just come with bad security settings by default.
Like what?
Like having Bluetooth always on, or in discoverable mode where anyone can see it,
Oh, right.
or using weak passwords.
Makes sense.
And then there are devices that people have rooted or jailbroken.
Rooted or jailbroken? What does that mean?
It means they've modified the operating system to bypass the security restrictions.
Oh, I see. So they're basically taking the safety features off.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And
right.
that can make them more vulnerable to attacks.
Got it. So basically it's a combination of things, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. The operating system, the hardware, the settings, the updates. It all plays a role.
So you really have to do your research before you buy a device.
You do. And you have to be aware of the risks involved.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the vulnerabilities and what we can do to protect ourselves. What about the Bluetooth SIG? Like, what are they doing to address all these security issues?
Well, the Bluetooth SIG is the group that oversees the Bluetooth standard.
Right.
So they're responsible for making sure Bluetooth is secure and interoperable.
Interoperable.
It means that devices from different manufacturers can all work together.
Oh, right.
So when a security vulnerability is found, it's often reported to the Bluetooth SIG.
Okay.
And then they investigate it. And they might issue a security advisory, or they might update the Bluetooth specifications.
So they're kind of like the police of the Bluetooth world,
You could say that.
making sure everyone's following the rules.
Yeah. And trying to stay ahead of the bad guys.
Good. So what are some of the things they've done to improve security?
Well, for example, they introduced secure simple pairing back in Bluetooth 2.1.
Secure simple pairing. Okay.
And then they added LE secure connections in Bluetooth 4.2.
LE secure connection.
These were both big steps forward in making Bluetooth more secure.
So they're always working on making it better?
They are. But it's a constant battle,
Right.
because as soon as they fix one vulnerability, the bad guys are already looking for new ones.
So it's like a cat and mouse game.
It is. And that's why it's so important for users to be aware of the risks and to take steps to protect themselves.
Absolutely. So I guess the main takeaway here is that Bluetooth security is not something we can just take for granted.
Definitely are.
It's an ongoing concern.
It is. And it's everyone's responsibility.
Mhm.
The manufacturers have to build secure devices.
Right.
Users have to use those devices safely.
Okay.
And the Bluetooth SIG has to keep developing the standard and addressing new threats.
So we all have a role to play.
We do.
All right. Well, that was a lot of information.
It was.
But I think it was really important to cover all of that.
I agree.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
Given how deeply integrated Bluetooth is into our lives now, like it's in our phones, our cars, our homes, our workplaces, everywhere,
Yeah, it's everywhere.
what does it mean for our overall digital security and privacy that this technology that we rely on so much is still vulnerable to these kinds of attacks?
That's a great question. And it's something we all need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining me on this deep dive,
It's been a pleasure.
and we'll see you next time.
See you then.